Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Don't know where you're tuning in from, but thank you for logging on here with Dr. Mom. Dr. Mom. Whoops. Dr. Mom Live Moving Forward series. Well, I try to air it at 1 o'clock. I'm not sure if that's what it's doing. Sometimes I see someone watching, but I don't know what time it's going out. So I try to at least have it done by a certain time so it goes live at 1 o'clock so that I'm on here every day at the same time, Monday through Friday. I did another video this morning, which is on my bodybuilding. And now I'm doing this one. So today I thought I would do one on loneliness. The reason it kind of came up, like every day I go to the gym early. And hopefully, like, I try to wake up with some plan of what I'm going to work on today for my video for moving forward. And specifically, principle one right now is foundations. The tiers are spirituality, setting goals, and self-development to make you stronger so you can move forward. Here comes Kitty. Right on track. So today I didn't come up with anything specifically before I got to the gym, but then after I was there, I started thinking about how you can just see, and also because I sort of went through loneliness for quite a long time. After my husband passed away, which has been about 5.5 years now, I'm trying to think if I could term it as loneliness. I felt lonely. I'm not sure. There was a lot of things I was going through, and one of the biggest ones, it was grief. But I think probably you could say it had, if I was really thinking about it, you could term it as loneliness. I was very alone. It was a strange time in my life, and it was during a period of time that not only did my husband pass away, but my dad passed away a couple of years later. I had my hound dog pass away, and then also my kids moved away, two of them, and grandkids. So it was all happening during a strange time in my life. But looking back on it, it was so good for me. And I think of it as, how a caterpillar spins a cocoon and then turns into a butterfly. And I was kind of looking into that to sort of present it, but it's kind of messy. But just think of it. So that's sort of how I feel. I was a certain way at one time, before my husband passed away. Honestly, it changed me profoundly for the better. I mean, it was hard, one of the hardest things I've ever done. But the reason I'm bringing it up is when I was in the gym today, I just really noticed certain people in their faces, they seemed lonely. I don't know, I don't know if it's our society so much nowadays. I don't know, but we've gotten to a place where we really don't go up to just anyone and talk to them and become their friend. You don't. So, especially with COVID, everybody handles it a little different. Nobody hugs anymore. You just don't. I mean, it's some people do, but a majority you don't. You don't want to interfere with people's bubbles because we have more of one now. But I've noticed it in the past, and the reason maybe I'm noticing it because I felt that way at the very first, I just wanted to meet someone so that I wasn't by myself all the time. And I'm so glad I didn't, though. I'm so, so thankful that I had to go, that I went through it, that I was able to go through it, and I came out in a better place. And my foundation grew enormously. So I don't know that it's a bad thing. I've been following YouTube. Matthew McConaughey just came out with a book, Green Lights, I think. And he talked about how he ended up writing it. And so he actually left his home and his family and went out and was by himself for quite a long period of time. And that's where he wrote the book. So I don't know that being alone is bad for us, but it sure isn't fun. It was a hard process. It was a hard process. I'm so glad that I am on the other side of it. But I see so many people who, for whatever reason, maybe it's just me because I empathize with someone who's possibly alone, you know. Not to say that I go up and talk to everyone, because I don't. Usually when I'm at the gym, I'm pretty into working out. So I'm like, I don't want to be bothered, and I want to get my workout in and and we're all like that, right? So I don't know. I just thought it was a good topic. With that, I have some quotes. I know it's surprising, but I am into quotes. So, and I have some statistics as well. So I thought it would be interesting. Is that the statistics are who feels lonely, and it's a BBC loneliness experiment 2018. That's even before COVID. Wow. Solving the loneliness epidemic 2 generations at a time. I also, when I think about loneliness, I also think of I follow Brene Brown a lot. I find her very fascinating. She's a doctor as well, and she does a lot of research, and I find it. I really like her research. I like what she's into. And I remember, hopefully I don't get this totally wrong, but and I listen to audiobooks more than I read, but I remember her book, and she was talking about how she talks a lot about vulnerability and how hard it is to be vulnerable. But she was presenting for, I believe, military personnel, and I'm going to say young soldiers. And she was talking about loneliness, and she actually had them raise their hand if they felt lonely, and they really didn't raise their hand until she kind of explained the philosophy of it. And then she found that almost all of them raised their hand. And it was because they were transferred to so many different locations. They never stayed really in the same place at one time, so they never had time to make connections or meet friends, and that they were very lonely. But so I'm going to go on to the quotes that I found today. So the first one is Douglas Copeland, and he says, "Remember, the time you feel lonely is the time you most need to be by yourself. Life's cruelest irony." I like that. I started thinking that today. I started thinking, when you feel super lonely, when you have this very deep thing in yourself that you just feel so lonely, you want to fill it with just everything or anything, or get away from that feeling, right? Because that's how the feeling of grief was for me. I remember thinking, oh, I just want to get out of this. I don't like this. I don't like feeling this way. And I think it's the same thing. It's almost in the pit of your stomach. It's a hard place to be at. However, now that I've been through it, and it took the full 5.5 years. Now that I've been through it, I think it is a very good place to be, because you change profoundly as an individual. You become it's the same thing with the caterpillar. You become this whole other person, and you just take off. That's how it's happened for me. And so I don't feel that way. Every once in a while, I really miss my kids and my grandkids, and every once in a while, but it isn't this desperate feeling of I can't be by myself. This awful, awful feeling inside that I'm just going, I need someone, and I used to go hang out, at the bar and things once in a while. I hung out at church. I went to the gym so I wouldn't be alone, where there's people. But I don't need to do that anymore. I'm really coming to terms at it, and it's been a very good thing for me, and almost one that I think I will embrace the rest of my life. If I ever get to some place where I'm around people too much, I believe there's times that I need to just pull away and be by myself and God, my higher power, which is God. So this is another one. This is Mandy Hall. She says a season of loneliness and isolation is when the caterpillar gets its wings. Remember that the next time you feel alone. So I think it's also a good thing to identify what you're going through. Why am I feeling this way? Maybe I'm going through a process that I need to go through, and trust that you need to just keep moving forward every single day, every single day. So my friend today, I did my bodybuilding earlier, and so she replied to me on there and said, she's like, this is a quote. I did a quote today. I'm so excited. It says, this is what she put on there. It doesn't matter how old you are. Don't let anyone put limitations on you. Dr. Mom. Thank you, Irene, by the way. I just love her. I'll tell you what. Talk about somebody who's, I don't know, just a profound individual. Who works on self-development all the time. We share constantly, and it's almost I feel like we're joined. I call her my soul sister because we study a lot of the same things. Like we'll email back and forth or text back and forth and go, "Did you see this person?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just watched that." And she's also doing bodybuilding, which is pretty freaking awesome. But thank you for that. That was so cool. I just thought that was so cool. I wouldn't have picked that up. So she always sees things I don't see. And I can't wait to start working with her. I'll tell you what, we're going to do some challenges and we're working together on it. Okay, the last one is the one I put in the description. John Mayer, and I like this. You aren't crazy. You're just lonely, and loneliness is a hell of a drug. Oh my gosh. That's exactly how I feel like you do feel that a little bit crazy at times. A little bit. Because I talk to my dog and cat a lot. Like we dance, I dance for them. Sometimes, we get into lots of conversations. I talk to myself a lot. But I think, one of the things, and you're going to like this, Irene, one of the things today at the gym that was a little bit odd, just a little bit odd, is I was, the ending, I always do these stretches and I'm rolling on the foam roller and I'm doing sort of this meditations by myself, and really getting into it. And a gentleman beside me reminded me of Goggins. I believe he was shouting things out loud, maybe to encourage himself to work out harder. But I kept going, is he talking to himself or is he trying to get my attention? Nobody else was really around, but it was kind of odd. So I don't know what was going on. I don't know, but I do know you aren't crazy. You're just lonely. at times, and loneliness is a hell of a drug. It is, and it can transform you as well if you let it. I mean, so I believe if you embrace it and you evolve through it and you challenge yourself and you move forward and you find ways to move forward, then it can be a hell of a drug, right? Then it can help you to grow into a whole new person, into that just a whole different person where you're no longer. I hope that I never have to struggle with that, because I feel like I've grown so much that I actually embrace being alone now. I really am enjoying it. In fact, that's why I'm doing my Dr. Mom Mobile, because me, myself, and I like traveling together. And I'm going to be writing and enjoying the scenery, and I get to see my kids and new adventures and meeting new people in my travels. I look forward to all that. So I feel like if you do embrace it and search for another way to grow through it, instead of maybe feeling like, this isn't about feeling sorry for anybody. It isn't about feeling sorry for myself or anything I've been through. What it is looking at it and the way that it transformed me, and saying, if you are lonely, if you are in that place, embrace it and learn how to reach out, get out of your own self. Some of the things I did is I actually made myself go to happy hour a couple times. It was hard at first, really hard. Like, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Go to the coffee shop and sit there. It's not going to hurt you. Go to the gym, even though you don't feel like you belong. What I found is places that you don't feel like you belong, if you go enough times, you actually feel like you belong. But it sometimes takes a while. But keep doing it. Don't give up because it feels weird, because it does feel weird. I'm going to be the first to say it feels weird. But I think that's the whole dopamine thing. When you give yourself a goal, I remember going to, when I first started going to happy hours and going out to the bar, I just needed to be around people. If I probably could lie and say I didn't want to meet someone, but I did. I was extremely lonely. I missed my husband really bad. And so I wanted to meet and talk to people, and that's why I went. I tried to drag out some of my friends, but they never really wanted to go. So I just would end up going by myself. I'm like, just go by yourself. And I would, and it was hard. It was very difficult, but I found the more I did it, the easier it was. And then the more I felt like I fit in, like, that's okay, I can do this. And then also, now that I'm learning more about the nervous system and the chemicals we produce, it's when you do things like that, you set small goals and you achieve them, you actually have chemicals in your brain that kick, that's Kitty making noises. You have chemicals in your brain that kick in and say, good job. Good job. You said you were going to do this and you did it. So good job to you. And each time we do that, it gives us a different level of confidence. That I'm just telling you what it's done for me. So I did download this very interesting experiment. It's kind of a survey that they did. And what it is they were looking at people who feel lonely, the age group, and it looks like, I don't know that they differentiated between men and women. Yeah, it just says people, so I don't know that it was between men and women, but depending, when I see, like what I see at the gym in people's faces, it doesn't have anything to do with men or women. The age group, it depends on when you go to the gym. I've seen it at different ages. Um, and I just want to reach out to him, but I haven't. I'm too busy. Like I don't. Sometimes I do, but not always. I just get my workout done and go. Is that sad? I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. Okay, so what it's saying is who feels lonely. They want to know who feels lonely. They've got the age group from 16 all the way up to 75 and plus. And the funny thing is you would think, oh, it's probably the 75 plus year olds that are widowed and things like that, right? That's not the case. That's not the case at all. The people that feel the most lonely, 40% of them were 16 to 24 years old. And do you remember feeling that way? So I've done some videos on my teenage self, and I went through that a lot when I was that age. I remember, I don't know, I was talking to someone, I'm like, I think I cried all the time when I was like 16. It's probably hormones adjusting and stuff. But honestly, I was very lonely. Super. So isn't that interesting? And also something to note. If you have friends, family, daughters, granddaughters who are in that category, 16 to 24, grandsons, it's not age specific. Think of that. They might be lonely. I think a lot of it is they're trying to fit in and grow up, and there is so much going on, both in the neurology of your brain and the chemicals and the hormones and fitting in and not fitting in and the bullying and all the cyber stuff nowadays. So just remember that. Out of this survey, 2018, this wasn't even when COVID was, just think of it now. I just kind of think, oh my gosh. So 40% were 16, the age of 16 to 24. The next highest percentage was 35 to 44, 36%. 35% was 45 to 54. 34% was the age 25 to 34, which is still a pretty big number. And I kind of wonder if part of that isn't the fact that maybe a lot of people are married by then. Get along, little doggy. Maybe by 24 to 5 to 34, it's hard to feel lonely when you have a family and you've got a lot of things going on. The next age group is 32%. That's 55 to 64-year-olds. I fall into that category where I like it or not, and I didn't ever feel that way. It's funny because I remember thinking I always really embraced my age. Like people would go into a certain age and like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be 40. It's awful. Or 50 and all those things. And before I became a widow, I never thought that way. I always embraced my age. But then after my husband passed away, I just had this huge thing looking at my age. And I felt like, oh my gosh, why didn't this happen when I was younger? Why is it now that I'm going through all this? And it was incredibly difficult. And then I also found myself denying that I was the age I was, almost saying, you're not that age, and I still, that's why I say I'm too young to be the age I am, but I'm too old to not to be this age as well. Like I fall in this category because I take good care of myself. I don't feel my age, but I am my age, and it's such an odd oxymoron type thing for me. It's just very strange because I never looked at it before until I was put into this situation. And I think it's because I'm supposed to go through it and embrace it and learn it, and so I can help other people get through it. I think, I don't know. I don't know. We go through different situations. We can either deny it. I shut the door. Sorry, I have to take my jacket off. Whew. It's really warming up in here. I try to be a little more dressed up for my doctor mom moving forward, but I just am running out of time. I have so much going on. So forgive the workout apparel. Um, I thought I need, because I like to slip into something a little more dressy for my business part of it for moving forward. I need just like, and then I usually wear shorts or something, on the bottom part. I just need like some outfit you can slip on that automatically turns you into a little more dressy. But anyway, okay. So I was at the 54 to 64-year-old, 32%. It's kind of in the mid range. And then 65 to 74 years old is 29%, which is a lot lower. And then 75 plus is only 27%. So I would assume that maybe a lot of the people that are going into the older range have already been by themselves for a long period of time and maybe learned to grow through it. I mean, their knowledge is there. But I still see people at the gym who they seem like they're lonely, even though they're that age. So I don't know. I think mostly I have empathy about it because I have so experienced it. That I just feel for people. I don't know. It really hit me today. I just saw it in people's faces, and I don't know. I guess maybe I should start reaching out more. I do as much as I can. I just only have a certain amount of time. So, but it's good to think about it, think about people and what they may be going through. Especially, I don't know, not especially, but the younger kids. I mean, who thought that was relevant at that. So the survey results indicate that 16 to 24-year-olds experience loneliness more often and more intensely than any other age group. That's important. 40% of respondents aged 16 to 24 reported feeling lonely often or very often, while only 29% of people aged 65 to 74 and 27% of people aged over 75 agreed. So it's those younger people that you really got to be careful and help them, reach out to them. I mean, if you know it, you can see what's going on. Okay, and so let's see. This is also the same study. They're talking about loneliness after COVID-19. So early in 2020, and that was, I believe, it was right around this time, if I'm not mistaken. We were kind of forced to work from home about that point. The first shelter-in-place measures reduced the spread of COVID-19, forced millions into physical and social isolation, and introduced the grave consequences of loneliness to many who had never experienced it before, at least not in a sustained way. But the pandemic only underscored what millions of people across the generations already knew. I was trying to think when I was married, my husband and I were very good friends. So I don't remember feeling lonely during my time married to him. I mean, it was rough, believe me. It's hard to be married. You go through a lot. If you can get through, I feel like after 20 years, you kind of iron out I mean, if I did it over, I would do a lot of things differently. But because we didn't do things differently, we just tunneled through it. After about 20 years, it seemed to get easier. There's just not as much going on where you're fighting with each other and things like that. Maybe it had a lot to do with me I went through a lot of self-development and education and tried to better myself and things like that. I guess you just grow up, but I honestly did not feel lonely until he passed away. Then I got a full dose of it for several years. And I'm so glad to be on the other side of it. I'm so glad that I was able to withstand it and work through it. And I love where I'm at now. So, loneliness has significant health consequences for all age groups. A psychology professor at Brigham Young University found that loneliness and social isolation can be as damaging to people's health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day and contributes to early mortality. So I have to wonder, like, I don't think for me it was unhealthy. I think for me it turned me the other direction and I sought out positive ways to deal with it. So I wonder, it'd be interesting to do a study on that, on how certain people deal with it differently. So, is it damaging to some people and then other people, they learn to deal with it differently. But anyway, other studies show that those who identify themselves as lonely are 59% more likely to lose the ability to perform daily living tasks and are at high risk of cardiovascular disease, obesity, dementia, and depression. That's sad. In 2018, British Prime Minister appointed the country's first Minister of Loneliness and announced a national strategy to fight one of the greatest public health challenges of our time. So it must have been, in Britain, it must have been a pretty big thing if they were considering it a crisis, right? Wow. So, despite the awareness of it, policymakers in the U.S. have been slow to call for or recommend solutions. So they must be aware of it, in other words. One point of light, however, is that local innovators, many young first-time entrepreneurs motivated to help elders during the pandemic, are stepping in, bridging their technology skills to the table and coming up with intergenerational solutions. I saw that as well. Like, I really admired where they were bringing meals to seniors, and a lot of the stores were delivering food and things like that. I tried to ask who I knew if they needed anything, the people that couldn't leave their house, So it looks like they can actually created gig technology, it looks like, to help others. So in 2019, they raised a bunch of money. This is interesting. It's called Freestyle Ventures and Cowboy Ventures, and they raised $3 million to form these venture groups. And they use funds to hire engineering and other staff to further develop technology. But in 2020, when COVID hit, hundreds of students enrolled at colleges in the Bay Area and had provided more than 10,000 hours of companionship to older adults, either in their homes or at their assisted living facilities. That's pretty cool that, at least good things come out of crisis that we've been through. So that's really cool. So another thing that they're doing is fighting intergenerational loneliness, which I wonder what that means. Over the past 2 years, we've learned a great deal from our partners, clients, and college students. We offer the following 4 lessons for other organizations working to fight loneliness while transforming elder care in the lives of older and younger adults. So, number 1 is to recognize the stigma. They're talking about loneliness being multifaceted and often difficult to face. Number 2 is tap the interest and commitment of both generations. So they're linking the younger generation with the older one. That's really cool. Use technology to engage younger people, build relationships and community. So that's their 4 takeaways from fighting loneliness. I might add another thing that's really cool is integrating animals into the mix. I've often thought about, and I just have never done, is taking, training my dog so she can be like, go into um, veteran center or hospital or something and help people who are alone or lonely or going through hard things. I've been going through it myself, so I haven't got to that point yet, but one day I want to do more of that. So loneliness, while the prevalence and impact of loneliness has grown in the past few years, which we all know why, there can be barriers to seeking help, including a sense of stigma, and inability, an inability to recognize the signs of loneliness, isolation or depression, or a feeling of hopelessness that can become a kind of paralysis. People may not respond to offers of help advertised as a loneliness solution. When bringing 2 generations together, it can be more effective to focus on mutual benefits or shared experiences. My thought on that is, well, just like I told you, I noticed it in the faces of people. Like I was probably blessed with going through what I did because now I understand and I can see it in people. Like you don't got to tell me if they're lonely or not. So I guess what I feel about that is sometimes you just got to sort of push it on them. Become a friend even though maybe they don't want you to be there. Sometimes you just got to make it happen. Okay, consider SAGE a national nonprofit providing advocacy and services for the LGBT elders. See, I would have never even thought about that section of people. Recognizing that pandemic-induced isolation and loneliness pose huge challenges for its community. It launched a new program called Sage Connect, which invites younger and older adults in the LGBT community and allies to talk as peers via weekly phone or video calls. Since May 2020, the initiative has connected nearly 400 seniors with younger volunteers who've made thousands of hours of calls. How cool is that? Wow, that just makes my heart sad and happy. I don't know how to explain it. Tap the interest and commitment of both generations. By asking directly, organizations can recruit younger people who want mutually beneficial relationship with older adults. See, it's really tackling 2 things, the older adult and the younger one. So, the percentage of younger one is by far out. So I would think the older ones maybe helping the younger ones. When we launched Mon-Ami, some were skeptical that college students would want to spend time with older adults. Many assumed that both generations would want to keep to themselves. But when we asked Stanford undergrads to spend at least 1 hour a week with an older adult who might be homebound, have dementia, or just want to connect, hundreds responded within 24 hours. That makes me want to cry. Student backgrounds and majors varied, but they all wanted to connect with and learn from older adults. That is so sweet. One student wrote, older adults have so much wisdom and life experience. Most of my friends are in their 20s. I'm missing out on some amazing intergenerational friendships. When the pandemic hit, nonprofits began calling on students like these. For example, when as older volunteers were forced to stay home to stay safe, San Francisco Village, a nonprofit community for adults 55 and older, didn't have enough people to deliver groceries and other essential services. Village members quickly realized that younger people in a city were ready to rise to the occasion. and their interest wasn't purely altruistic. Confined to working from home or separated from their families, younger people were experiencing isolation and a desire for connection too. How sweet is that? See, we live in a great world, don't we? I mean, if you look at those kinds of things, that's so cool. Okay, so they're using technology to engage younger people. Many nonprofits have relied on paper forms and in-person training, operating successfully without technology. But organizations that want to recruit, screen and train young people and connect them with older adults simply must update, outmodel process and adapt to mobile apps. Whew, that's what I'm trying to do. It's a lot of work, kind of. Um, okay. A volunteer manager at Open House, an LGBTQ senior serving organization in San Francisco, says technology brings a lot of young people who work in tech or are tech natives to us who would never be able to engage otherwise. Shifting to digital operation doesn't require hiring a programmer and designer to custom build an app. In its early days, this organization made use of free or cheap online tools to sign up interested students and coordinate connections with seniors. So that's like me, you got to use your own camera and your phone and just go for it. Take your own pictures, learn how to get online, all those. Build relationships and community. Although online tools make it easier to get young people engaged with older adults, digital connection is no substitute for human connection. At this organization, it's called Mon Ami. We track the number of phone calls and errands students make and do for their senior matches. That's cool. Which then allows staff to reach out personally and recognize them for their generosity. Nothing builds community faster than the feeling of being seen and known. Relationships are also at the heart of Shanti Project, a San Francisco-based nonprofit that builds human connections between marginalized people, including those living with life-threatening illnesses, LGBTQ plus older adults, and adults with disabilities. The organization pairs each of its volunteers with a client by virtue of their shared humanity and with the expectation that they will meet once a week for at least 6 months. Volunteers not only offer practical support, but also foster a deep, meaningful, and trusted personal connection with their client. That's cool. Some long-lasting relationships bloom between younger and older adults based on shared interest. At Mon Ami, we matched a 79-year-old former car mechanic with a student majoring in biology. Both enjoyed building things and spent time making and flying paper airplanes. We also paired an 84-year-old client who loves poetry with 2 undergrads who enjoy listening to the new poems she has read. That's sweet. They've been connecting for more than a year. Life beyond the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed both our vulnerabilities and our resilience and deep desire to connect. That's so true. We have seen new and long-lasting friendship emerge across generations as the shock of the pandemic has pulled people closer together to make sense of things. The pandemic also has accelerated the adoption of new solutions, both impersonal and technological. To ease social isolation. For example, it pushed Mon Ami to consider how to scale from one-to-one direct service model to enabling platform for communities across the United States. By becoming a technology partner to the thousands of government and nonprofit agencies that work to lessen loneliness, we can make the most difference. That's really cool. I guess to me, it's really cool that this kind of company went to a bigger level, to help people. Okay, so this is the second article. It's loneliness, and it's more of a spiritual article. So I think all of us at some point or another, whether we're sitting in our rooms, going out about our day, or even in big groups of friends, have had that nagging feeling of loneliness that just doesn't seem to go away. One of the most frustrating parts of feeling lonely is that it's a situation that people rarely seem to address. And the fact that we are often too embarrassed to say we are lonely contributes to us feeling even more lonely than we did in the first place. And that reminds me of Brene Brown's work with loneliness, how almost no one wants to say I'm lonely or admit it or even recognize it, especially men in the military. They're not allowed to have feelings. So it was just pretty crazy, her surveys and what she was talking about. How people just don't want to admit that why is that a problem to admit that? Why? Because it makes us feel weak or what? You know? Because we often have the idea that we can never be alone when we know God is with us. Our feelings of loneliness are often compounded with a sense of guilt. Either either we aren't as close to God as we should be, or that we should be better at making friends. That's interesting because I started thinking about that. I did. I started thinking about it. I'm like, I never used to be, well, at least in high school, like I knew how to make friends fairly easy, but I don't really have a lot of close friends now, or it doesn't feel like it. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. A lot of my good friends don't live by me, a lot, and my family and things. So, yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Well, taking time to hang out with other people is important, and communing with God certainly is valuable. I think that one of the most damaging things we can tell ourselves when we're in a state of loneliness is that we shouldn't be feeling that way. After all, if Adam literally walked with God in perfection in the Garden of Eden and still felt like he was missing something, that's interesting, isn't it? By not having another human being to share his life with, it is not good for man to be alone. Genesis 2:18. We should understand how normal it is to feel that way in our own lives sometimes. Understanding how natural that feeling is instead of blaming ourselves or explaining away makes dealing with it much easier. That's a good way to look at it. You know, I because I think because I've always been looking at it as a weakness that I felt lonely, and I always said, um, just toughen up, and you know why you don't feel that way. At the same time, just because we feel lonely at one particular day does not mean we always feel that way, which is very true. Like I went through, but grief is like that, and healing through that process, I would be feeling one way one day and one way, where I loved being by myself. The next day I hated that feeling of being alone. So it went back and forth for a long time, growing stronger and stronger each day that I went through it. So I guess I would tell anyone, just keep moving forward because you'll get to a place where it's not as hard. But I do remember feeling how overwhelming it was at times. At the same time, just because we feel lonely at one particular day, okay, I read that. Knowing that loneliness is temporary helps us to move past it because we know that we just have to push through it. It will not last forever. While loneliness is completely valid and understandable, we have to recognize that there are times that we just did not get enough sleep the night before, or are hungry, overstressed, or affected by the gloomy weather outside. Do not underestimate the power of covenant fog. Um, That's probably very true. It also depends on if I'm going through something, like if I have to make some kind of big decisions or change or something like that. It kind of gets a little worse at that moment because you're having to make big decisions on your own. I have to say that in my own times of feeling lonely, I always seem to have a hard time finding practical advice about what to do to help me feel better. I can't say that there is a magical answer, but I can say that there are practical steps that help to ease some of those difficult feelings. First, as simple as it sounds, just telling a close friend or family member makes a world of difference. It may not take away the pain, but it helps to know that someone is there to listen and affirm that you're having a hard day. I'm not very good with that. I never really told anyone I was having a hard day. I think I would call some of my friends and say, "You want to go out?" I did tell them Friday was my hardest day. That's when I always wanted to go out. But I never really said um, I was having a hard day because I was lonely. Another thing that has been extremely helpful is just looking forward to the next time we'll be hanging out with someone. It's impossible to be surrounded by people 24/7, but in those moments we're by ourselves, we can always make an extra mental note about how fun the next time we hang out with someone will be. Please, if we want to hang out with someone even sooner, there's always the option of inviting a friend to catch a meal at the Great Hall or even play cards over a cup of coffee. Everyone wants to love and be loved. So, one of the best things we can do when we feel lonely is to go through a list in our heads of all the people we know that love us and care. I did that a lot. It's nobody's fault. You just are going through it. Often, by the time we get to the end of the list, we realize there are a lot of people who love us than we remembered. I've also found that taking the time to write a quick note or note of appreciation to some of those people can actually help to ease loneliness. Animals help me tremendously as well. So after my husband passed away, I had two dogs and a cat. Yeah, two dogs I'm not going to talk about that cat, but two dogs, and they helped me immensely. And then after my hound dog passed away, I got another cat, and they help a lot. So, okay, often by the time we get to the end of the list, okay, I found that signing up to volunteer somewhere or finding some other way to serve often has the same effect because when we show our love to others, we often feel love in the process. And I did volunteer at the church for several years. I'm not as much now because I'm trying to get my projects done. Finally, while we are in those in-between times when we can't hang out with other people, there is something to be said for enjoying a healthy measure of me time. Maybe that means stretching, walking around a little bit, and getting out of our rooms to go sit somewhere else. Getting some vitamin D or having a change of scenery may make a bigger difference than you think. I was taking my dog for a walk just to get out in the sunshine. Also, I made myself go to the movies a few times. I'm good with all that now. That's nothing to me. But it was scary at first. I had to get out of myself and just do it. I had to just, whew, that was hard. I remember. Well, looking forward to the next time you're planning on seeing someone. In the meantime, do something you know you will enjoy by yourself. Sit at the overlook, read a good book, do a word search, or take a long walk. You might even find out at the end of it you had a really good time. I always found that out. Finally, I have to add that, cliche or not, talking to God about how you're feeling in the exact way that you would talk to a person sitting right next to you is very helpful. While I'm not feeling lonely right now, I have in the past, and just like everyone else, I'm sure I will have those moments in the future at times. I want to be vulnerable and share about loneliness because I think it is something we all experience and do not talk about enough. I agree with that. I hope that discussing this topic will help to foster more conversations about loneliness in our social circles, on our halls, and across this beautiful community we all have. That's so true. And I think when you do embrace it and you learn to work through it and you build your life stronger, like I've been doing, then and build that foundation and strengthen those relationships and grow your spirituality and all of those things and develop your personal self development. You make yourself stronger so if there is another time, you're able to deal with it and you have the tools in how to do it. Um, to all my wonderful brothers and sisters in Christ out there who, like me, have experienced loneliness or are feeling lonely while reading this, I want to encourage you that it's completely normal and there are a lot more people going through it than we often think. Hang in there. You're not going through this loneliness alone. And that's very true. What I like just what I said, I saw it at the gym. I saw it in people's faces, like I see it in other people's faces because I understand what it's about. I know what it's like to be lonely like that. And it's rough. It's very hard. So I guess the takeaway is you can reach out to others. And I've often heard people talk about, oh my goodness, it's April 1st already. But I've heard about people say, even when you're with someone, you're lonely. Now, I never had that experience because I don't remember ever feeling alone. Now, we were going through struggles of certain sorts, but I never really felt alone when I was married. So I don't know that. So this is our devotions, April 1st. I'm calling you to a life of constant communion with me. Basic training includes learning to live above your circumstances even while interacting on that cluttered plane of life. You yearn for a simplified lifestyle so that your communication with me can be uninterrupted. That makes me think of meditation too, but I challenge you to relinquish the fantasy of an uncluttered world. Accept each day just as it comes and find me in the midst of it all. Talk with me about every aspect of your day, including your feelings. Loneliness. We don't like to talk about that. It seems like a weakness to me. Remember that your ultimate goal is not to control or fix everything around you. It is to keep communing with me. A successful day is one in which you have stayed in touch with me, even if many things remain undone at the end of the day. Do not let your to-do list, written or mental, become an idol directing your life. Instead, ask my Spirit to guide you moment by moment. He will keep you close to me. 1 Thessalonians 5:17 and Proverbs 3:6. Okay, I'm trying to make it to the hour mark. So I was procrastinating somewhat, but I love sharing that message with everyone. It just has helped me. When I did feel lonely, that's when I really started reading scripture and things like that the most. I felt like I wasn't alone when I did. So if I turned to reading scripture or the Bible and things like that, it's because it helped me through it. Another one that I found very, very instrumental was I would, after Grief Share, I signed up with their email, and every day it sent me an email for a couple years. And it was just on grieving, and it usually provided some kind of scripture for the day, and it really helped me. So I think it's just called Grief Share. If that helps. I don't know. It's difficult when you're alone, and it depends on the circumstances. But I definitely have been there, and I'm still there at times. I still am there at times. But I'm working my way through it, and I'm coming on the other side. I really am loving my life and where I'm growing to, but I wouldn't be here if it wouldn't have been going through many several years of being lonely and just working my way through it. So much love to all of you. My prayers go out to anyone who's experiencing that or just going through it right now. And much love to you all. Make sure you subscribe, like, put comments in, ring the bell. If you want me to do some research, just type it in for me and I'll be here tomorrow. You have a great sunshiny filled day.